My husband humiliated me in front of his family and gave me one final choice. Beg to stay, he said, or leave this house with nothing. He expected tears. He expected me to fall to my knees. He expected me to remind everyone how much I needed him. Instead, I stood up, picked up my handbag, looked him in the eye, and said, "You should have asked who built your future before you tried to destroy mine." Then I walked upstairs, took 2 suitcases I had packed 3 months earlier, and left his mother's mansion without looking back. What none of them knew was that I had been preparing for that moment for 5 years. And by the time my husband realized I was serious, the first crack had already opened beneath everything his family thought they owned. My name is Amina Adeyemi. I was 37 years old, and to everyone around me, I looked like a soft-spoken wife who had married into wealth and learned to stay quiet. That was exactly what I wanted them to believe. My husband, Tund, came from one of those families that carried power like a second skin. His mother owned properties. His older brother controlled transport contracts. His cousins were always talking about land deals, politics, money, and influence. Every family gathering felt like a performance. Everyone had a role, and mine was simple. Smile. Serve. Stay grateful. For years, Tund reminded people that he had rescued me from a difficult life. He liked saying it at dinners, weddings, and business events. Amina was lucky I found her, he would joke. She wouldn't survive 1 month without this family. People laughed. Sometimes I laughed too. But every joke was a wound. And every wound taught me something important. People who underestimate you usually stop watching closely. That was my advantage. In the first year of our marriage, I tried to love him honestly. I tried to ignore the little things. The way he cut me off in conversations. The way his mother corrected how I sat, how I dressed, how I spoke. The way his sister looked at me like I was a guest who had stayed too long. At first, I told myself every marriage needed adjustment. Every family had tension. Every woman had to earn her place. But earning your place is one thing. Being slowly erased is another. I still remember the first time Tund embarrassed me in public. We were at a dinner with investors and relatives. One of the men asked what I had studied in university. Before I could answer, Tund laughed and said, "Why does that matter now? My wife runs the kitchen better than any office." Everyone laughed. I smiled. But that night, while he slept, I sat alone in the bathroom and cried because I realized something painful. No one in that room had expected me to have a voice. Not even my husband. That was the night I changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Silently. The next morning, I woke up at 4 a.m. and started studying again. At first, it was just small things. Online business courses. Export documentation. Commodity pricing. Supply chain basics. I spent hours learning while everyone in the house still slept. When Tund traveled, I worked longer. When his family hosted parties, I smiled through them, then came back to my laptop after midnight. I began with a small trade network, connecting local women's cooperatives to buyers for shea butter, dried hibiscus, and handmade fabrics. My first deal was tiny. My second almost failed. My third made so little profit that anyone else would have stopped. I didn't stop. Because I wasn't building a hobby. I was building an exit. Over time, 1 buyer became 3. 3 became 7. Then came a contract with a beauty supplier in Accra. Then another in Nairobi. Then a quiet shipping relationship through Mombasa that changed everything. By the 3rd year, I had something no one in my husband's family had ever imagined I could create. Income. Real income. Steady income. Hidden income. I kept separate accounts in my maiden name. I invested carefully through legal structures my lawyer helped me create. I bought a small apartment in Lekki under a holding company. Then later, I acquired a piece of land outside Ibadan through a clean transaction no one connected to me. That land would matter later. At home, nothing changed on the surface. I still poured drinks for guests. I still sat quietly while Tund spoke over me. I still nodded when his mother lectured me about respect. Sometimes people mistake silence for weakness. They never realize silence can also be strategy. Then came the day everything broke open. It was my mother-in-law's birthday, and the house was full. Uncles, aunts, cousins, business partners, church friends, everyone was there. The air smelled of perfume, roasted meat, and expensive arrogance. I had spent the entire afternoon helping the staff prepare the dining area. By evening, my feet hurt, but I kept smiling. Tund had been drinking for hours. That usually made him louder. Crueler too. At some point after dinner, the conversation turned to marriage, loyalty, and modern women. One of his cousins made a joke about wives becoming too independent. Everybody laughed. Tund leaned back in his chair, looked straight at me, and said, "Independent? Amina? If she ever leaves this family, she'll be begging to come back before the month ends." The room exploded with laughter. His mother smiled into her glass. His sister shook her head like it was obviously true. Then Tund stood up, walked around the table, and said the words I will never forget. "If you think you're so strong, leave. But leave with nothing. Everything you enjoy came from us." The room went quiet after that. Not because they were shocked by him. Because they were waiting for me. Waiting to cry. Waiting to apologize. Waiting to submit. I stood slowly. My heart was calm. That surprised even me. I looked at Tund first. Then at his mother. Then at everyone else in that room who had watched me be reduced, year after year, and had called it marriage. Without raising my voice, I said, "Thank you. You've finally given me the perfect ending." Nobody understood what I meant. I walked upstairs. Opened the wardrobe. Pulled out the 2 suitcases that had been ready for months. When I came back downstairs, the room felt smaller. Tund's smile was gone. His mother stood up halfway and asked, "Amina, what are you doing?" I placed an envelope on the center of the dining table. Inside were copies of divorce filings, property records relevant to my legal interests, and one letter addressed to my husband. Then I turned to him and said, "You were right about one thing. I am leaving tonight. You were wrong about everything else." I walked out. No one followed me immediately because no one believed I would keep going. That was their mistake. I didn't drive around crying or calling friends. I drove straight to the apartment I had fully furnished months earlier. It was quiet, elegant, and mine. For the first time in years, I locked a door behind me and felt peace instead of fear. I slept well that night. The next morning, my phone was full of missed calls. Tund. His mother. His sister. Unknown numbers. Church women. Family friends. I ignored all of them. Around noon, I finally opened the letter I had left a copy of for myself. It reminded me why I could never go back. In that letter, I had written the truth plainly. That a woman can die in pieces long before her body disappears. That humiliation repeated often enough becomes a prison. That respect, once lost for too long, does not return because a man is suddenly afraid of consequences. 3 days later, Tund sent a message. "Stop this drama and come home." Not, "Are you safe?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not even, "Can we talk?" Just control. Even now. I didn't respond. Instead, I met with my lawyer and began moving everything into place. Accounts were reorganized. Corporate documents were reviewed. Asset exposure was mapped. Old transactions were updated. I changed passwords, contact points, signatures, and access permissions. Calmly. Quietly. Completely. A week later, Tund started telling people I was bluffing. According to him, I had nowhere to go, no real money, no plan, and no ability to survive outside his family's protection. I heard all of it through mutual contacts. And I smiled. Because while he was busy performing confidence, another truth was already moving in silence. The land his family had been trying to secure for a major logistics expansion, the one they had spoken about carelessly at several dinners, was land I had quietly acquired through a lawful intermediary 18 months earlier. Not all of it. But the most strategic parcel. The access route they needed. Tun didn't know because Tun never noticed anything that didn't flatter him. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Weeks passed. His family remained loud. His mother kept telling people I would return once reality humbled me. His sister claimed I was being manipulated. Tun continued going to meetings like a man in full control. But cracks had already started showing. One proposed development stalled. Then another conversation with investors slowed down. Then due diligence raised questions no one in their family could answer fast enough. They thought it was bad luck. It wasn't. It was the cost of arrogance meeting reality. During that same season, my own business entered its strongest period yet. Because I no longer had to hide, I expanded faster. I brought in 2 staff members. I opened a regional sourcing office. I secured a packaging partner in Kigali. For the first time, my company had shape, rhythm, and visible momentum. Every contract I signed restored something inside me. Not revenge. Something better. Self-respect. Months after I left, I attended a trade conference in Nairobi. I stood on a panel about women-led export networks and spoke for 20 minutes without once doubting my voice. When the audience applauded, I felt a strange ache in my chest. Not sadness. Grief for the version of me that had once believed she was small. Back in Lagos, Tun's world was becoming unstable. The first major sign came when one of his senior managers resigned unexpectedly. Then another left. Then a consultant refused to renew. Small things, one after another. Nothing dramatic on its own. But enough to change how powerful people looked at him. Confidence is fragile. Once people suspect weakness, they start asking harder questions. Tun hated questions. He began losing his temper publicly. At the office. At meetings. Even at family dinners, from what I heard. He blamed staff, market conditions, disloyal partners, enemies, even spiritual attacks. He blamed everyone except the one person standing in his way. Himself. One evening, he called me from a private number. I answered because I wanted to hear who he had become. At first, he sounded angry. Then tired. Then something I had never heard from him before. Uncertain. Amina, he said, what exactly are you trying to do to us? I stayed quiet for a second. Then I said, nothing. I left. That's a lie, he snapped. Deals are stalling. People are acting strange. Investors are asking questions. I looked out through the window of my apartment as the city lights flickered below. Finally, I answered, maybe they are seeing what I saw years ago. He went silent. Then he said, you think you're smarter than this family now? No, I replied calmly. I just stopped pretending you were smarter than me. He ended the call without another word. That conversation followed him like a shadow. Not because I threatened him. Because deep down, he knew I had spoken the truth. A few weeks later, the truth became impossible for him to ignore. His older brother called an emergency family meeting after legal checks confirmed that the access parcel tied to their planned logistics project had been acquired by an entity linked to my business structure. That was the night panic entered the family. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later from someone who had served them tea and listened from the corridor. His mother kept saying, that girl. Impossible. His sister said I must have used someone else. Tun said almost nothing. Because for the first time, the woman they had dismissed as decorative had become a fact they could not insult away. He called again the next morning. This time his voice was lower. How long, he asked. I knew exactly what he meant. How long what? How long have you been building all this? I sat at my desk and let the silence stretch. Long enough to understand that survival and loyalty are not the same thing, I said. He breathed out hard, like the answer had punched him somewhere pride lives. You planned this. No, I said. I prepared myself. There's a difference. That difference mattered. I had not attacked his family. I had not sabotaged their empire. I had simply refused to remain powerless while they enjoyed imagining I was. By the 8th month after I left, the divorce was moving forward. Slowly, because families like his always believe money can delay consequence. But delay is not escape. Around then, his mother sent older women from church to speak to me. They came with soft voices and hard intentions. They spoke about forgiveness, patience, and preserving marriage. They asked whether success had filled me with pride. I listened politely. Then I asked them one question. When your sons humiliate their wives in public, do you call that marriage too? None of them answered. After that, the visit stopped. My life kept improving in quiet, ordinary ways that felt almost miraculous because they were peaceful. I woke up without fear in my chest. I worked because I loved what I was building, not because I was trying to outrun pain. I bought fresh flowers for my dining table simply because I liked how they looked in morning light. I visited my mother more often. I laughed easily again. Freedom is not always loud. Sometimes it is just the absence of dread. Then, almost 1 year after the night I left, Tund requested a final meeting through our lawyers. I agreed, but only in a formal setting. When he entered the conference room, I almost didn't recognize him. The expensive suit was still there. The watch. The polished shoes. But the energy was gone. He looked like a man carrying invisible weight. He sat across from me and stared for a long moment before speaking. I never really knew you, he said. No joke this time. No performance. Just truth arriving late. I said nothing. He continued. He spoke about pressure, family expectations, mistakes, misunderstanding, pride. He said he had been wrong. He said he should have listened. He said he thought there was still a way to rebuild what we had. But I had learned something important in my time away from him. Men often start speaking gently only after their power stops working. By the time he finished, the room was silent. He looked at me as if waiting for mercy. What he did not understand was that mercy and return are not the same thing. So I answered carefully. Tund, the marriage did not end the night I walked out. It ended slowly, every time you made me feel smaller so you could feel bigger. I only left when my body finally caught up with what my soul had known for years. He lowered his eyes. For the first time since I had known him, he had no defense. Then he asked the question people like him always ask when consequence becomes personal. So that's it? I looked at him calmly and said, that was it a long time ago. You just didn't notice. Something inside him broke at those words. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way truth often breaks people who spent too long avoiding it. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. By then, my company had expanded into 3 countries. The land parcel issue had forced his family into an expensive restructuring. Their project moved forward eventually, but at a cost far higher than expected. Investors trusted them less. Employees spoke more carefully. And Tund, once so certain I would crawl back, had become a warning whispered in rooms where powerful men discussed control like it was love. I did not celebrate his downfall. That may surprise some people. But revenge is loud and temporary. Peace is quieter, and it lasts longer. One evening, more than a year after I left, I stood on the balcony of my home and watched the sun sink into the city. My phone buzzed with a message from a young woman I had mentored through one of our trade programs. She wrote, "Thank you for showing me that a woman can build in silence and still win in the end." I read that message 3 times. Then I smiled. Because that was the real victory. Not that Tund lost control. Not that his family was forced to see me clearly. Not even that I had built wealth they never imagined. The real victory was this. I had become whole again. And if there is one thing I want every woman listening to remember, it is this. Silence is not emptiness. Patience is not weakness. Preparation is not fear. Sometimes the quietest woman in the room is not powerless. Sometimes she is simply waiting for the right moment to stand up, walk away, and let the people who mocked her discover too late that she was never the weak one. She was the foundation they built their arrogance on. And the day she leaves, everything above her begins to crack.